Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whenever you happenstance in this dialogue. I'm joined today on Patrick Level Truth Bombs, The Con. We're recording this on Monday, September 8th, 2025, at approximately 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And for those of you who've caught a couple of these segments before, you'll realize that the gentleman above me is a man by the name of Eric S. Vaughn. He's the proprietor of an amazing production company of which I've been affiliated for some time called Red Point Digital. I'd highly encourage you to check it out. He's also the face and the creator and the executor, producer. Let's just call it producer of a wonderful initiative that's called Corruption Incorporated, the American Way. And the reason I wanted to reach out to you right now, Eric, is because we have some monumental situations occurring that you and I have been in the forefront of some time. And I'm going to actually share the screen while we talk, but I want to ask you a question while I'm looking how to do this technically.
Sure.
Your first sort of feedback, analysis, overview, what you thought of when you read the article this morning on the front page of the New York Times of how involved JP Morgan Chase was and to a degree is, and what stood out with you with all things Epstein.
Well, I mean, the first thing that stood out is that, I mean, how much of this we've already have discussed, and and how much of this basically sort of, the Venn diagram between stuff that we covered in the con and stuff that's discussed in this particular article, is that shared space is quite heavy. But yeah, no, what stuck out the most was that I mean was the fact that wow, we have literally been talking about this for some time. We've been talking, I mean, since the since more the financial angle on the Jeffrey Epstein case has gotten like what little air that it has gotten when it did start to kind of erupt a little bit. Um, I feel like that we've been, completely on it. We've been able to, kind of see how these tendrils go back to the stuff that we've been covering for more than a decade.
Okay, so I'll offer my, and I think that's great. I'll offer my sort of initial knee-jerk reaction. First and foremost, this was written by some crack editors, senior editors at the New York Times, one of which I interact with quite a bit, a gentleman by the name of David Enrich. David Enrich wrote the book Towers of Secrecy, and that was the book about Deutsche Bank, but it was about the story of Deutsche Bank's usage of control fraud and its connectivity between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. I remember when it was released a couple of years ago, Rachel Maddow, of course, had David Enrich on immediately to talk about all things Donald Trump in connection to Vladimir Putin, but she had no idea what control fraud was. And it made me basically laugh, like so many other scenarios that you and I observe all the time, because you have somebody like Rachel Maddow, who is the face of MSNBC, and she got paid at that point, I'm going to say 26 million a year. It went up to 40 million a year for a 1 day a week scenario. And Rachel Maddow has shown us time again. And I promise you, I'm absolutely convinced on tonight's Rachel Maddow on Monday night, because she's in once a week. I'm sure she's going to lead with this story with David Enrich. And it'll be
I wouldn't be
interesting.
surprised. I mean, honestly, I think that that's probably highly likely. I mean, but the thing is that every single time, even though like this really very like well documented and deep story falls on her head, she only covers like she typically, I mean it's been my experience that she only covers like the most razor thin layer of it before moving on. I mean I
As it
think that
relates to Donald Trump, that's what she gets paid to do.
right, exactly. And I think that that's kind of the point that I was getting at. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. Go ahead.
No, 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 no. And I apologize. I'm just maybe emotionally reacting for a moment, because these are the things that you and I have been bringing to the fore now for years. We don't get paid $40 million a year to do it. I'll just cut to the chase. We're providing you the revelation of something that's in the tens of trillions of dollars, and we'll circle back to what that all is. But we're giving you the truth for free, because all the American people buy our lies. Why? Because it is a psyops. Why? Because corporations who own, and in this particular case, Microsoft, think about that, MSNBC. Why is that important as it relates to how JP Morgan enabled crimes of Jeffrey Epstein? Because the further you get into this article, by the way, there's a whole lot in there about Bill Gates. And I'll get back to that. But the long and the short of it is what Eric and I had to do that no one in the country was able to do was we realized that the mainstream media was not equipped to tell the truth of what we were experiencing, primarily what I was experiencing because I was going through it, and I shared it all because Eric has been my colleague and my partner for many, many years. And one thing led to another. We were able to put it together, and we went on a journey that ended up being an odyssey that's lasted roughly, I'm going to call it 14 years together. And it
Right.
keeps going on. But this is a monumental moment right now because this isn't a bitch storm about Rachel Maddow in so much on a personality scenario. I think she's incredibly smart. She has incredible resources. She's incredibly compelling for the stories that she's willing and able to tell.
Right. And I think that's the important thing, the able part, because I think that ultimately, I think that she'd be far more effective if she wasn't hamstrung by the people who stroke her checks. I
Okay,
mean,
but it's that's a major part of the story because the New York Times today is finally telling a deep dive truth about Epstein and his relationship with the nation's largest bank, JP Morgan Chase. And so what stood out to me originally, Eric, is we're going to go through this, and I don't want to, talk for hours and hours and hours. I want to do it pretty quickly, and maybe this becomes a series, an ongoing series that hopefully we can chime in on and think about what we missed. But we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. We got to continue bringing the truths that you and I have access to that nobody else does, that intertwine with what this is. And I'll start with what I started with, that David Enrich is working with me, us, on a variety of levels. In fact, I just did an interview with him on his latest book, Murder the Truth, which is all about libel based on the New York Times versus Sullivan. And the reason that's important is because all things, Peter Thiel and the Gawker scenario, billionaires have methodologies to be able to suppress the truth. That's what's been going on in mainstream media for a very long time, mostly because a lot of these big law, well, I should say the corporate attorneys within, the large media empires don't want to be sued into oblivion. That's first and foremost. So they aren't willing to tell the truth. We were. I guess it was because we had nothing to lose, and we could go into all of the other peripheries of that, but that's not important for the moment. But I want to kind of skim down here because really the genesis of this whole thing, Eric, for me, and I want to see how you respond to this, is what you and I talked about last week. So the attorney for the victims of the Epstein crimes, the women that were, they call themselves survivors. They're survivors of the entire honey trap enterprise, right? And
mhm.
they want to tell their truth. But one of the key considerations that were taking place on the steps of the Capitol last week was they couldn't name names. They can't name names because there was already a settlement with JP Morgan Chase for $280 million where the victims settled. So they can't name names. Otherwise, just like any sort of scenario legally, like what's the biggest thing that happens in corporate non-disclosures, right? When you sign
Right.
non-disclosures, you can be destroyed if you let this information come to the fore. So they need Congress to do it. That's what this whole Transparency Act is all about. And so the attorney for all of the Epstein victims said to the media, you're looking in the wrong place. You need to be looking into the FinCEN files, the FBI, and the SEC. And when I asked you this last Friday, I asked you, what does that mean to us? And you and I both know we've been on the insides of that for now over a decade. Okay. So let me just start there with you, your reaction again to this article vis-a-vis the FinCEN files.
Well, so the FinCEN files would be a great place for people to start digging, right? I mean, the trouble is that who's going to? Because I don't trust that anybody who's under the thumb of this particular executive branch is going to actually pursue this in any way, shape, or form. All we have to do is look at what happened with Gary Aguirre, right? To see what happens to people who are pursuing a case that the powers that be don't want pursued. So if they did look, and I think we basically said this last week, they're going to find. I mean, so much of this overlaps into, everything that was coming out of those, that and the Panama Papers, right? I mean, so looking into what do they call it? The when
Suspicious
suspicious
activity report.
activity reports. Yeah. Yeah, the SARS. I mean, man, that's all you have to do. Just start there. I mean, just think of how easy it was like when in the stuff that we were talking about in the con. All they had to do was look at the statement of facts in each one of these civil cases to have like a fully righteous criminal case. And I think that that's the other thing that can possibly happen here, because on one hand, yeah, Congress can come in and subpoena, right? And I think that that'd cut through any non-disclosure, but wouldn't criminal proceedings also do that?
Amen. Now, the reason why this is such a big moment is because David Enrich just put this on the front page of the New York Times today and addresses everything you just asked. He talks
Mhm.
about the suspicious activity reports, and it's not just him. There was two other editors on this whose name eludes me at the moment. I'll give them credit towards the end of this discussion. But this picture that's on my screen, and do you see the screen that I'm sharing, by the way?
I do.
Okay. So this guy's by the name is Jess Staley. As it turns out, and I knew who Jess Staley was before, but I didn't know him as well as I do now after this article. He was being groomed, by the way, to replace Jamie Dimon as the CEO of Chase. Interestingly, he spent the previous 2 decades working, I believe, for Chase down in Brazil. Okay, now I happen to know that Brazil was Rio, particularly, is one of the most corrupt places in the world. In fact, there was a documentary film that came through Sundance, like I think 2008ish. Interestingly enough, where the highest sales of personal helicopters in the world was in Rio because all of the super titans of corruption would never go
Right.
down to the streets because they'd get kidnapped and have their fingers cut off in the event that they got caught by, you know, the street thugs that needed to hold them for ransom because they were obviously stealing from everybody at the apex of their towers, right? Jess Staley may have been one of those guys. Who knows? Maybe that's the reason why he wound up sitting next to, as it turns out, Jamie Dimon in the suites, the penthouse suites, the C suites of J.P. Morgan Chase. Now, interestingly enough, the reason why that matters is because Epstein had from day one, he had the ticket. Think about Willy Wonka, right? You got that golden ticket to get to the penthouse, right? Epstein, coming from out of nowhere, literally had the gold ticket to the C suites right away, and he's dealing with this guy Staley on high net
Right.
worth uh, access to clients. Why? Because upon their first meetings, according to this article, Epstein had a ginormous list of very important people that he was doing business with. Some of the people that are mentioned in this article include, and I gotta think this is the reason why they're doing this article now is because I think that Trump is going to reveal the so-called black book, minus all of the people that are associated with him. He's going to
Right.
probably target all the people that are associated with the Democrats, of which Sergey Brin. So it turns out Sergey Brin put his entire net worth, or no, I'm so sorry, because he's worth far more than this, but he put $4 billion as a result of the meeting with JP Morgan, excuse me, with Epstein, into Staley's high net worth management. So $4 billion came from Jeffrey Epstein into Chase. That was one of several that are mentioned in this article. Okay.
Right.
Interestingly enough, and I'll let you talk in just one second. Okay, so there's a picture of who are we looking at there? Of course,
Our
none
best friend Jamie.
Jamie. And actually, this is a good. I should ask you, what did we learn in the con, my friend, about about Jamie Dimon?
Oh boy. I'm not sure if we have enough time to to discuss that, but we do know that he basically was I mean, I'm going back to
I'll ask you
remember.
for a specific of
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah. Please do, because I'm going all the way
because
back
you and I
to our
both know from the
discussions in
early
Texas.
you and I both know from the early days. Who was I reaching out to? I was reaching out to then none other than our Elaine Fleischman. Elaine
Mhm.
Fleischman was a woman who was on the front page of Rolling Stone at the time where the great Matt Taibbi was doing his 10,000 word essays and all of the corruption on Wall Street. And I just happened to be in the office of Will Dana the day that uh, the article came out. And the article I swear to God, I was the first person to see it because Will Dana was the managing editor of Rolling Stone and now a friend of ours. And he was Matt Taibbi's boss. And I was in the office the moment they delivered him the cover of Rolling Stone magazine with Elaine Fleischman on it, and it said the $13 billion witness. Okay.
Yeah.
That was the story of really the con and JP Morgan's version of what they were doing. And so he's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. But what we show, particularly as it relates to our trailer, and I want you to chime in on this, and this was the motive of the motive of the question. What do we know that what do we know that Jamie Dimon was in the midst of with none other than Barack Obama's Attorney General Eric
Right,
Holder?
Eric Holder. Yeah, I mean, the big thing that we know about Jamie Dimon is that he had like, I don't know, dozens of meetings with Eric Holder right at the height of all of this. And as Paul Pelletier always says, that is the worst kind of message that can be said, that can be told. You're basically taking somebody who should be under investigation and completely normalizing him, right? Completely saying that not only that, but we're going to have, I mean, for all intents and purposes, the way I read that is that, oh, Jamie's basically helping shape policy. If he's having that many meetings with the head of the Justice Department, then yeah, I'm thinking that somehow, some way, he's basically shaping policy in some sort of way. A person who, for all intents and purposes, should be the centerpiece of an investigation into the reasons, the causes, and the after effects of the 2008 financial crisis. And he's basically sitting up there with our government, advising them,
Can I
presumably,
ask you
on how
another?
to handle things.
Can I ask you another kind of another framed question just to get your
Sure.
reaction to it, even though I know your answer, but our audience needs to know this answer. So based on what you just said, to reiterate it, it's just that you don't have the subject of investigations actually interact behind closed doors with the top law enforcement official in the United States, which at that time was none other than the Attorney General of the United States. Said another way, if you are an investigator for the NYPD and you're looking into organized crime and you kick it up to the DA, Rudolph Giuliani, who is actually becoming sort of an expert in all things RICO because Giuliani in the early days with the mob was, quite frankly, the guy that brought RICO to a whole nother level. Would Rudolph Giuliani meet with John Gotti to discuss what he was investigating?
Well, I mean, of course not. I mean, I mean that's a very appropriate, sort of scenario you bring up because I mean, it's true. Would you bring a crime boss in to talk to the district attorney in order to figure out how to clean up the mess that crime boss had made? I mean, come on, come on.
So let me ask you a follow-up question. That did Rachel Maddow ever ask that question?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, but it's like you said. I mean, we're talking to a reporter who's having to report with both hands tied behind her back because of I mean, presumably of the golden handcuffs, right? I mean, that's the way of corporate media these days. And that's why we only get certain parts of the story, and that's why we're going to continue to only get certain parts of the story. Whatever parts of the story say who somebody put it this way. They say something like the only part of the story that you're going to hear is the part that they want you to hear.
By the way, that's
And
how
so
prosecutions work. If you want to know the truth, they can finagle that in front of grand juries. So that's what we're doing on a daily basis. We're investigators, we're real journalists, we're guys who've got more information than, quite frankly, the New York Times has revealed to the American people. But what our friend, and I consider him a friend, and I'm going to be talking to him soon, and I hope he joins us this week on our weekly broadcast, going to be David Enrich, who is at the helm of this story. So I'll continue forward real quick. Epstein was on his way to becoming one of JP Morgan's most important clients. A 2003 internal report pegged his net worth at 300 million. The report, which hasn't previously been disclosed, noted that Epstein's occupation was advising wealthy individuals like Wexner, the billionaire operator of brands like Victoria's Secret, through bank documents at the time did not list other clients. That year, JP Morgan attributed more than $8 million in fees to Epstein, making him the biggest revenue generator among investor clients at the private banking division. Please tell me what you just heard by way of it. What the fuck is an investor client, Eric?
Right. Well, so if well, just what keeps coming to mind with this, especially as we see that later on in this article, I believe they discuss how when Epstein's proclivities started coming to the surface, you know, evidently there's bankers who have like some sort of a conscience were sort of questioning as to whether or not they should be doing business with Epstein. But then ultimately when they say, well, he's like one of our top earning investor clients, as you were like, asking about just a moment ago. So therefore everything's fine. And I guess that was the end of it. And I think the important takeaway from that is that, I mean, what can we expect when the only morality is profit at all costs?
Okay, so
Because
look at this.
that's what we're seeing.
This is Mary Erdos, okay, and she is, or I don't know how you pronounce her last name, but it's spelled Erdos to me. She was a top J.P. Morgan executive, and she signed off on new loans to Epstein months after the indictment when he got nailed. So let me read this thing, which I thought was extremely uh, telling exactly to what you just said. And I think, let me just make sure it wasn't right here. Um, I want to get to this because it's so unnerving what you just said on a. Okay, here we go. Check this out. In private, Staley and Erdos seemed to make light of their clients' predilections. That August, Staley attended a Hampton fundraiser and was struck by the crowd's composition. Quote, the ages between husbands and wives would have fit in well with Jeffrey, end of quote. He told Erdos in an email. She replied that Epstein's name had come up at an event the night before. An acquaintance noted how another prominent New York businessman liked to surround himself with beautiful assistants. Quote, lots of comparisons to Jeffrey Epstein, i.e., J.E. This is in the email. Erdos wrote, adding that people were laughing about Jeffrey.
Right?
About that culturally. What do you hear when you read about that culturally?
I mean, we're talking about an entire like group of people who have become completely morally bankrupt and completely, off their moors. I mean, the thing is that when you have so much power, you can have anything you want and you have nothing pulling you back. A lot of people just go ahead and take whatever they want and do whatever they want because they don't have, the structures of society to tell them otherwise. And so when your morality comes down to, I can do this because I'm powerful enough, and I'm powerful enough because I have access to money, I mean, this is the kind of thing that we can expect. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, when we think about the parties, Mr. Self-described holy roller, from the S&L crisis, Lincoln Financial.
Keating.
Keating, he would throw these parties. He, of course, was not partaking in any of the salacious things that were happening, but he threw parties where he made sure that those things were happening, and he used that in order to keep people in line. It's a tactic that existed before Keating, and it's a tactic that has been more than embraced after Keating. And I think that it's pretty clear that that's something that we see, with Epstein. I mean, why else would he be doing this with all these clients, at all these different locations, whether it's Miami, New York, or the island? I
Paris
mean,
also, and other places. And by the way, they were pulling a lot of these women from Eastern Europe, and there was a Russian connection, and a major Russian connection through modeling agencies. But then there was, we'll see downstream, a lot of money through Deutsche.
right, right, the Italian, Yeah, yeah, no, I
Well,
know.
no,
It's like
The French modeling agency, and he ended up committing suicide supposedly in prison in 2023, right before Epstein did. And he was,
funny how that happens.
but to your point though, in terms of, let's see, what did you hit on there that I wanted? God, there was something that was so important there. Do me a favor, just repeat what you just said, just the top line of it, if you can
Let's
remember.
see. We were talking about Keating. We were talking
Okay,
about
Keating,
the
Keating,
right.
Keating, 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 Keating. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So, okay, Keating was a super anti-smut, anti-porn crusader. That was his whole thing, right? He would basically, while they were setting up these huge parties of blackmail in Vegas and in Miami and so on and so forth, which preceded, of course, the great Steven Soderbergh's Sex, Lies, and Videotape. The whole idea was to get guys in the closet to film senators sleeping with prostitutes while they were doing cocaine, and then to use that as blackmail to get what they needed, right? That's what all of these SNL high flyers were doing, including Keating, who happened to be an anti-smut crusader. By the way, do you remember, and I know this is silly to ask you this, but just for the audience, who was his chief economist?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Alan Greenspan.
Alan Greenspan. Yes. Yeah,
Who did
thank
Alan
you.
Greenspan become?
The head of the Fed and the person who basically articulated the Greenspan put, which made everybody feel nice and comfy in putting out their horrible secondary market products.
Right. And he also told the world that nobody saw the 2008 great financial crisis coming. And what do we have? What information do we have, Eric?
Oh yeah, we know people who well ahead of the crisis were going directly to him because the Fed is the primary regulator for these things and could have very easily have stopped and averted the 2008 financial crisis if they thought to, if they wanted to. But
If
no,
they
we have
investigate,
people who went directly to him.
if they looked,
Um,
and if they found, like the point you make all the time, but also, what was the 2008 great financial crisis? Primarily mortgage fraud. What's happening right now? Who is Lisa Cook, by the way? She's a Fed board governor, right? She's being
right, mortgage fraud, right.
accused of mortgage fraud at the moment. Okay, that's going to go to the Supreme Court. We could talk about that, but we've already talked about it. We'll talk about it again. But my point at the moment, though, was that in the con as well, we discovered that under Bush, then Attorney General Anthony Gonzalez had taken away resources from then Director of Investigations, who was pulling the noose around a national mortgage fraud, and they took away the ability to take it to the next level because they put
Right.
resources to go after
Porn.
and porn.
Right. Adult porn. Yeah, yeah. That was Swecker, correct? Swecker
That was
went to
Slugger.
them
Are
with
we
a
seeing a trend
specific.
here? Are we
Yeah,
seeing a
yeah.
pattern?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's almost funny. I mean, it's so cliche, but it's so sad that they can't seem to break away from their own tropes. That the people who are the biggest, holy roller, anti-smut, anti this, anti that, anti-gay, anti whatever, are the ones who are the most neck deep in it. And it's just, I don't know. I don't understand the psychology of people, but I mean, but it just seems time and again they can't break away from this cliche. And that's what it
Because
is.
it's
It's
so
that
easy to
shallow.
use. Because apparently everybody, I mean, it goes unbelievable to the whole nature of Epstein by way of I could go and fill in so many blanks, including when Elon Musk took over X. The first thing that happened was there was this groundswell, this inertia of all things pedophilia, and of course it was being used to angulate towards the Clintons and Pizzagate and all the rest of it. But what was shocking to me was what felt like everybody seemed to have been molested at some point. That's the only thing that made sense to me. It was like millions of people have been molested, so they don't trust anything. So this pedophilia thing is something that they've all experienced. I don't know. I'm just digressing. I don't mean to go off on that tangent, but here's another thing to consider. When Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme collapsed in late 2008, Erdos asked Staley to call Epstein to get the scoop about how wealthy clients in the Palm Beach area were faring. Around the same time, a rumor was circulating that Diamond might become the Treasury Secretary in the Obama administration. in which case Staley would be a prime contender to succeed him as the chief executive. And he says here at the bottom, we can help push Obama. How do you feel about that, bud?
Well, I mean, we know that Obama's nomination, rise within the Democratic Party coincided with him getting the blessing from Jamie Dimon. So, of course,
Think about the
obviously.
internal mechanics of this. Okay, let's just put this up. By the way, I'll add one more dimension. So we mentioned Elaine Fleischman. Elaine Fleischman was reporting all of the subprime goings on at J.P. Morgan Chase. She became the $13 billion witness that, of course, Matt Taibbi had covered thoroughly and brilliantly, quite frankly. Simultaneously, you got this guy Staley working with Epstein. He might replace Jamie Dimon because he might become the Secretary of the Treasury. And meanwhile, he's up to his eyeballs. And we know Epstein is connected to Bear Stearns. Bear Stearns is connected to Liquid Capital. Liquid Capital is connected to what appears to be all sorts of international money laundering and to subprime, by the way.
Subprime.
But I
Well,
digress.
subprime in mortgage-backed securities and every other form of derivative based from that. And so yeah, I mean anybody who's going to be in finance and in placing money for wealthy, investors and stuff like that in that era was going to be neck deep in the mortgage fraud and
Now
in the
get a load
right.
of this though. Get a load of this. Staley at times shared confidential information. As the world descended deep into the financial crisis of 2008, Staley divulged to Epstein that the bank was trying to buy one company and sell another. The next month, he revealed JP Morgan's private bank had been inundated by the 44 billion in new assets in the past 2 weeks. Now, this is interesting. He disclosed that JP Morgan Chase was working on a deal for the Pritzker family, and he detailed that the bank's talks with the Federal Reserve about how to stabilize the financial system. Over and over, Staley passed what he later acknowledged was potentially a market moving information to a criminal.
I mean,
Okay,
aren't
it
they?
goes on. It goes
Right.
on, and everybody's in doubt. Okay, look, I could go on and on and on and on and on. And we look. The bottom line is here, people. I'm just going to close this out right now, and then I'm gonna just kind of bring us to a close because we could talk forever. Look, my friend Eric Vaughn and I have worked together for 14 years, chasing the white whale. Not only did we find it, we found every piece of the story that created every aspect of what's going on. We've got answers that even the New York Times is literally this late to the game. People, it's 2025. We released the con in 2020, and there seems to be some very peculiarities that, I mean, I'll tell you, Eric, when I was watching the investigation of into what would become the 34 criminal indictments against Donald Trump as it related to all things, sorry, people, I got to say it out loud, even though it's hilarious. David Pecker of the National Enquirer and
Oh yeah, I remember that.
well, that's what led to the 34 felony convictions because of the deceptive acts and practices and lying and everything that they nailed his ass on that most people thought might derail him from becoming a president, but no. But David Pecker's National Enquirer for decades was involved what's known as catch and kill. Now, we don't know if we were in that particular scenario, but I can tell you, given the information that we have, it seems pretty obvious that somebody might not want all of the information that we have revealed to the American people out there, just like this article is happening in 2025. So, Eric, where can people find the con?
Oh, well, they can go to thecon.tv, can just register and download, or not download, but you can stream directly from there. And I urge everybody to do it. It is, okay, so it's like 5 hours plus of content, but believe me, it is the most concise and streamlined and digestible uh, story as pertains to the ins and outs of the chicanery and the criminality occurring in our financial system. And we give it a strong historical context. We use that to understand, how it came to be in 2008, and we use that to understand exactly what it was going to do. Back then, it was what it was going to do, to our system. We can know now that that prognosticating is actually premonition, right? Because everything that we said that was going to be the lingering effects of the financial crisis. And by me, I mean the myriad of experts that we brought to bear in the con basically describe the world that we're in today. And so if you really want to have a cogent understanding as to why we are in this world, watch the con. There will be no better primer for you to understand the world that we live in today than that. And I mean that on multiple levels. I mean, the reason why your house is the houses are too expensive, the reason why rent's too expensive. Let's go into what's probably going to be happening this week coming up, right? I believe it's on the 11th that the new inflation numbers are supposed to come out. I would be shocked if those numbers aren't spiking. You combine that with the jobs report that we recently had, and what you have is stagflation, right? I mean, isn't that basically it? It's like, inflation is going high, but the economy is struggling. So that is like kind of the worst case scenario. And I think that there's a really good chance that that's what we're going to see. The reason why we're in this worst case scenario are the after effects of the 2008 financial crisis and every form of criminality that went into that and that we're continuing to see to this day.
Is season one the only information we have?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So we have an awful lot of well, one, we have the precursor to the con Forward 13 that we're going to be making available here soon at some point. So hopefully we'll all be able to check that out. But also we have several hard drives worth of footage um, that basically kind of continue to tell, the story of these lingering effects that led us right up to the doorstep of today. And so between all that and then between the work that we're consistently doing now, whether it's your Truth Bombs the Con channel, or whether it's the new Untouchables, or whether it's Corruption Inc., where I'm at, all of this information is coming out in all these different places. And so we're trying to put it at your fingertips. So please like, subscribe, hit the little bell button, right? Sorry, I'm doing your job now, but
Well, that's
honestly,
great.
it's
No,
worth
please
it.
like, subscribe, and share and all that. But yeah, I mean, I've only got 650 truth bombs that I've been doing since we didn't get the con out there, revealing all of the elements, including the new Untouchables, the Pecora files that I did with Steve Grumbine, and you participated in, but so did everybody else. We've got the whole fucking enchilada, as they say, and we've got more and more, and it comes out, and we'll finish it like this, Eric. Do we have the story of why the mortgage fraud scenario is insanely relevant and very revealing as it relates to Lisa Cook and the Federal Reserve? Would you say that we have that whole story?
Yes, without a
Okay.
doubt.
Would we have the whole story, for example, of Deutsche Bank now? I mean, I do, we do collectively, but we have it. Okay. So let me ask another question. What about the Federal Reserve, Eric? Do we have a lot of information about the Federal Reserve?
We have so much stuff about the Federal Reserve that we have not yet been able to get out there. So hopefully we will be very soon, because there is a ton in there, and especially with all of Trump's attempts to basically, I'm not sure
Hijack,
what the word would be. Yeah,
hijack.
hijack. Correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't Powell appointed by Trump in his first
Yes,
administration?
of
Yeah.
course.
I mean, so it's just everything's so asinine.
Okay, but let's also talk about, is Pal a hero?
Oh
Where's
God,
Pal?
no. No, no, no. But
Pal
here's
was
the funny
involved with
thing.
all sorts of insane stuff that,
Oh, I know. But it's really going to be intriguing what's going to be happening here in the very near future, because if we are in fact in a stagflation scenario or at the edge of a stagflation scenario, I mean the Fed is such a blunt tool to try to deal with this, you know, and I know that Trump's been trying to egg him on to lower interest rates, but the thing is, you know, like I said, I'm no economist, you know, I'm not a trader, you know, any of those things, but what I do see is that if he wants to reduce interest rates, and the reason that Trump wants to do that is in order to deal with unemployment. I mean, I I don't think that it's going to help because the reasons for unemployment this time around are different than they have been in the past, are they not? I mean, it's AI putting people out of work. It's the immigration policy, you know, it's pushing people out. It's you know, the Doge basically kicking, you know, I don't know how many people, you know, onto the
300,000.
right, you know, from the government. I mean, interest rates aren't going to touch those things. And so what are those lower interest rates going to do? It's going to hyperinflate the asset bubble. That's the only thing that it can do. And I think Powell is smart enough to not do that, but there's a lot of pressure that's being placed on him. And maybe these people just don't care because a hyperinflated asset bubble doesn't hurt the super rich, just hurts us.
Well, yeah, yeah. You asked a question that is confusing because, of course, they don't care. They don't care about the mandate. They don't care about low inflation and high employment as their mandate suggests. They care about hyperinflating the assets in the stock portfolio of those that they're in the same
Yeah, they make tons of
which is
money.
corporate America. And then, by the way, I mean, we're going off on tangent at different place, and we could go on and on. But yeah, I mean, look, Trump got rid of the $687 billion that was approved for renewable energy and wind, and just completely kneecapped it. Everything he's doing is basically leaning in towards, of course, all things dirty fuels. But ironically, the oil and gas industry has just laid off 13,000 employees in the last week. Okay, so they're nobody's friend. And to your point, things are a little bit different and shaky, but it's a continuation of the same thing as what we're trying to tell you. This has been the same, the second, third, fourth, fifth verse, same as the first. This is a 40-year sort of scenario, and it all is being drip, drip, drip to the public through the mainstream media. But what we're telling you is we've already had the information for years. And you can find it at thecon.tv. You can find it, I'd highly recommend Eric Vaughn's Corruption Incorporated, The American Way, which you can find throughout social media, particularly YouTube. Obviously, the work that we're bringing together in the nevuntouchables.com. And of course, the answer to it all is what I continue to, once you understand what the problem is, and all of this stuff is the blueprint for what it is, the answer is the Clean New Deal. The answer is getting tens of trillions of dollars out of the hands and the control of the guys that are basically the financial terrorists flying us into the metaphorical Twin Towers. That's what this is. And they got an escape hatch. You don't. I don't. That's why we have to come together and we got to figure a way out of this. Go ahead, Eric. Final
No,
words.
no, no, no. I was just going to say that you're absolutely right, and you know, we have to do whatever we can to. I mean, for the 99%, they have done a wonderful job in bifurcating us, right? Because what they can't have is for everybody to be united behind these issues. I think that's why the Occupy movement was stamped out because unlike what was reported in the news, you and I were there, not just in one place. We were there like across the country at dozens and dozens of occupying encampments. And the one thing that I know for sure is that it was pan-ideological. You had people on the far right, you had people on the far left, and you had everything in between. And I think that that's why Occupy got crushed because it was America's proletariat unifying. and getting behind something. And I think that that was the most terrifying moment in recent history to the powers that be. And so here we are now, you know, MAGA and, whatever the non-MAGA is being completely split, from each other. We're weak that way. The important thing about what you and I are doing is that we're trying to unite everybody against corruption, against malfeasance, against the oligarchy, against all of those things. If we can not recreate, build a new coalition of the 99% to go after these people, we can do something. We can have the country that we all dreamed about, that we were told lies about. Those lies can still become truth if we're able to put it together, which means that we have to get everybody across the spectrum in the 99% back together so that we can like go and press upon that 1% and make sure that we make the country in our image, not theirs.
That was really cool. And by the way, I saw one of your recent micro docs. I'm not sure what you're calling them, but from Corruption Incorporated, where you said, I was revisiting our work in Forward 13 and it felt like yesterday.
Yeah,
It felt
same
like everything
problems,
that we
same
talked
issues.
about then was exactly what's going on right now, which of course we know and nobody else figures out. And that was a great closing statement. I'm gonna close with this one. So I've said for some time, because of the lessons that we learned, that we're not a democracy, and nor do we function as a capitalistic economy. It's all a lie. We're a corporate fascist state, and my good friend Eric Vaughn used to say, "Well, that's redundant." Well, I'm saying it for the double impact. We're a corporate fascist state undergirded by a criminal syndicate, the con, that uses the full faith and credit of the United States, you, me, and everyone you see, to guarantee the mafiocracy, because that's what this is. From Epstein through Chase, through all of the other elixirs of Epstein, but they're just the entry point. We've got the full burrito, my friends, to the full enchilada, as we like to say. And now that mafiocracy has complete control and is guaranteed, which I hate to say it for all of my friends out there that are more of the social democrats. No, it's socialism for criminals. That's what this is. It's socialism for
And
criminals
only for them.
and only for them. And ultimately, now they're fixated on fascism. And so, not fixated, they need fascism. This is what all failing empires need. They need to circle the wagons into the believers so that they can protect the guilty from everyone else because of lies. And what I say is if you, me, and everyone you see who isn't a Nazi, that's a key consideration, who believes in liberty and integrity and dignity and decency and sustainability and beauty, and we merge in unity to prop up what's right behind me, the Clean New Deal, which I believe will be our destiny to purge the misery of tyranny and unleash the renaissance of possibility. When you, my friends, become a nuclear reaction vector to the Big Bang of truth to force light into darkness. My friends, thank you for tuning in. Onwards and upwards. Peace out to you. And I love your face there. You're like, did that guy just say that? Yes, I did, Eric Vaughn. All right, man. I'll talk to you later, bro.
All
Take
right,
care.
take care, man.